Hi, everybody. Good to have you back. Good to have you back, of course. It's great. It's great to have anybody listen to this, so I appreciate you listening. And anybody subscribing to the YouTube, I appreciate it. But I'm going to talk to you about just like some cryptocurrency theory versus fiat currency. But people are like, there's a scam with cryptocurrency. Uh, I mean, people are worried about this issue of centralization versus decentralization. Bitcoin is more decentralized than regular currencies. Like for some reason, anybody who's like a surface level investor in crypto, the only thing that they can rely on to tell people why they're investing in it is because it's more decentralized. Like this is as far as anybody gets. That's the idea that anybody knows. It's like that's what gives its values, that it's decentralized, and then people go after the idea of this by saying that they're actually centralized. And as I've said on here a number of times, cryptocurrencies are both centralized and decentralized. It's just that Bitcoin is relatively more decentralized than national currencies. And the reason for that is because if you have like Chase Bank and there's 5 people that have a bank account with Chase Bank and they each have like $1,000 in it, they have a bank account. All of that money, those five $1,000 accounts, they're pooled as $5,000 on within Chase Bank. With Bitcoin, if each of those 5 people took their $1,000 out and then put it into Bitcoin, then what you have are 5 separate banks because each of those people are storing that money in their own personalized wallet. Or in other words, um, or in other words, or in other words, there's 5 different banks, and so this is a decentralization of money because there are as many banking facilities for Bitcoin as there are individuals holding it, or something close to that. And for like Chase Bank that's holding fiat currencies, there are far fewer Chase Bank facilities than there are people with accounts in it, but people have to pool their accounts in these facilities, and so those facilities are more centralized. But there's as many facilities for Bitcoin as there are people that invest in it because they put it in their own wallet. But what's valuable about it is that people are the sole proprietor of the money that's in their bank, or in other words, they are the bank, or the bank exists on their phone. But like um Warren Buffett was Warren Buffett is quoted as saying that he doesn't own anything in cryptocurrency because, I mean, I guess he doesn't think that it's going to work out, allegedly. I think that that's probably bullshit. He probably sees that this thing has gone up, however, like 5,000% in the last decade or whatever. And he probably has some money in it. He's lying to the public, but because because his wealth is probably more dependent on the current state of things. That's how he got his wealth, and is in the current environment. And so he probably deals pretty well in that. He's probably pretty comfortable in the current state of things. The current stock market is Warren Buffett, I would guess, because he's made so many billions of dollars just investing in stocks. Like he doesn't want an emerging network of stocks to come about that he's not familiar with. But like he probably has some money in it. Overall, he's lying to the public that he's saying that he has nothing in it. But he was saying that he's like, I don't put any money into it because ultimately it doesn't produce anything. He's like, I don't think you should invest in Bitcoin because it doesn't produce anything. And so like whoever it is that runs this article will never give any counter argument to that statement. That's kind of like the way that things are now. They do the same with Elon Musk, is like, this billionaire said this, and so wow, I guess you should start doing that, rather than that any like people often don't question billionaires in articles they write about their statements, I would say. And so, but like a few years ago there was a lot more there was a lot more positivity about like news for investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum, because all of the articles that they ran about them were just new headlines about progress that any one of them that Bitcoin or Ethereum was making. Like they used to just run headlines about like, now this organization is doing this in order to set the stage for accepting Bitcoin or whatever. And like they still run those articles as long as you dig a little bit deeper than what first comes up if you search Bitcoin or Ethereum news. They still run articles where you'll see like today in Bitcoin news, like the country of Costa Rica is now accepting Bitcoin or whatever. Like you can see these articles that progress is being made. It's just that it used to be only those articles about the time before the latest leap in the cryptocurrencies where they are started to be valued at more. Like the latest leap that came in 2021. Before that, there was a lot more positive press, but now there's a lull. Some of it has to do with just there's a ton of negative press about cryptocurrencies because it became a political issue. Like a few years ago, the rest of the world, people who didn't like cryptocurrency and didn't want it to be in their lives, didn't have to answer for it in any way. But now enough money has been invested into cryptocurrencies that cryptocurrencies as an economy of currencies are actually a competitor to other economies of currencies and to the US dollar. And so now it's become a political issue. The same way that we used to not question Fox News or CNN like circa 2002, but then it became a political issue whether or not we're going to believe these news agencies, these centralized news agencies, and then perception towards CNN and Fox News deteriorated and has been deteriorating as perception of news itself becomes decentralized and people decide that they decide what is new, as they realize that it is unnecessary to perceive like the news anchors at CNN to be the people that tell you what to do or hold newness over you. It's kind of like holding there, like we hold the power of the future because we're going to break what's new and what's current before anybody else hears it. And so when Twitter comes along, massively decentralizes the power of narration of any standardized news agency in anywhere in the world. Twitter massively decentralizes the narration of these. Just by giving everybody the power to be their own statement creator. Like before Twitter and Facebook and these came along, the story of the story of an individual, like an individual's publicity or public life was more given over to everybody else. But it's like Twitter comes along and the individual is able to control the value of the way that they're perceived a lot better. Like they control the value of their own statements, like the collection of statements and tweets that you put out. There's value in those tweets, and that value used to just be collectivized with like whoever else was around you, like relatives or friends or whatever, just kind of like the idea of you to them, the perception of you to other people, your publicity in a sense used to just be given to everybody else. But Twitter comes along and you get to be your own bank for the value that is your individual statements. But it's like the Twitter provides a platform for you to monetize just your own individual statements, but it has to do with like public life becoming private, or really it's like it's a decentralization of privilege, so to speak, where privilege takes on a new life at the point that privacy is more given to the individual. You see it happen with Twitter. Twitter gives people the ability to control their own narration. Cryptocurrencies are offering people the ability to control their own wealth rather than keep it in a bank. But it's like Bitcoin is decentralized because there's like 5 different banks for that $5,000 that would have just been centralized in a bank. And it's like Warren Buffett is saying that Bitcoin doesn't produce anything, and that's a completely ignorant statement, because of course it produces something. That would be like saying that Facebook doesn't produce anything. It's just more intangible to describe what the product is. Bitcoin's product is Bitcoin's, first of all, but it's like Facebook's product is the website, and there's that documentary, The Social Dilemma, I believe. The Social Dilemma is talking about how they're trying to describe what is the product of what's Facebook's actual product. And they're like, you are the product. That's the conclusion they arrived at. And this is The Social Dilemma. That's got to be what it's called. Social Dilemma. Whatever, I'm not going to look that up. But they said that The Social Dilemma made this big deal out of like, you need to watch out for Facebook because they're making you the product, or it's like they're transforming you into the computer or something. And it's like you being able to interface with Facebook and use the program that Facebook wrote does more cause you to be more digital, or it's like you're kind of uploading your thoughts and your consciousness more into the cloud. If you're just giving yourself over to this thing, you're spending all your time doing it and engaging in it, you are like giving yourself over to it. But that's a really stupid way of describing it, to say that you are the product through Facebook, because it's pretty obvious that Facebook's product is their website, the same way that McDonald's product is burgers or something. Like the thing that they're offering, the thing that Facebook offers is its website. That's the product. You can see that. It's just like some people are unable to handle the current state of things with products that they're more intangible. Like product is becoming more abstract in this world, in the digital age. And so you actually have to define the product as something like a website now, and people aren't comfortable with that. So they get out of it by saying like, Facebook doesn't have a product, you're the product. Their website is the product. That's what it produced. That's what the program produced. The program that was written produced a website. Bitcoin is the same. I mean, Bitcoin is a similar thing. It is a product. One thing it produces is endless banking facilities, or as many it produces banking facilities, literally, and a lot more than Chase Bank is able to produce. Chase Bank only has so many funds to produce so many facilities that people can put their money into Chase Banks. Bitcoin, through the program that's written, produces a couple things, but one of them is facilities for banking. Like, it allows people to facilitate their own banking, but like it produces a lot more banking facilities than Chase Bank does, is one reason why it is more productive. But besides that, like, its product is Bitcoin ultimately. The program that was written that created Bitcoin, before it was written, there aren't all of these billions of dollars and however many, like, Bitcoin is at, it's over $1 trillion. Like, Bitcoin's at, I don't remember the numbers, so I'll just say a really general figure, like Bitcoin's at 1.5 trillion. But if nobody writes that program, that $1.5 trillion isn't going to be held up in this position that was created at the point somebody wrote the program. It's really like the program is the product, but it is a product, and it names itself Bitcoin in the product. It creates the supply of Bitcoin, and what's created is this function that's more valuable than centralized banks. And so it's this invention that produces something, and you cannot deny that it does, because people put $1.5 trillion into it as a result of it being a more valuable function, which is always the reason why anybody buys a phone, or invests in the newer inventions, is because they find it to be a better function than other things. And so Warren Buffett saying that it doesn't produce anything is completely ignorant. It doesn't make any sense. The product, if you want to look at it, that is like, it's ultimately the program, and the program is a product because it's a formula, it's a concoction of statements that are aligned in a specific way and produce a game and a set of rules by which people can invest money in different ways than they could ever before the thing was created. It's a product. It's a concoction of statements. It's a recipe. It's a formula. Um, the U.S. dollar is the same thing. The U.S. dollar is also a product because it arises as a result of the relevance of the United States as a country. The United States as a country is created because it's held together by things like the Constitution, but like the Constitution as a document is kind of the equivalent to the program that's written that creates Bitcoin is like whatever computer program and the series of statements and commands that are given to create Bitcoin. And so the formula, the product of Bitcoin is the program, and that program consists of rules and laws and like call outs, like allowing for people to store the money in their own individualized bank. This is all written into the program. There is another program that's written that created America. It's the Constitution. As long as the Constitution is held together, America stays constituted, basically. Like it's that's the document we say is the most holding us together, or the one that we'd say is the most important for like this is what makes America what it is a constitution, because America remains constituted as long as people perceive a lot of strength into the Constitution. It's like perceiving strength into the country itself, or the unitedness of the country, or like the borders of the country. The country only stays as the country and stays within its borders basically as long as we revere the Constitution that continually constitutes the United States, and we've been revering it for 250 years. And it's like the program. Bitcoin is essentially, as it stands now, unless something changes drastically, Bitcoin is the reserve currency of cryptocurrencies of the entire entire economy of currencies. Bitcoin is the reserve of the entire economy of fiat currencies. The U.S. dollar is the reserve. And so this is the crux of the competition, is the rules of the game written in the Constitution versus the rules of the game written in Bitcoin. They are both products. They both produce a currency. And they both have value as it stands now. The U.S. dollar has a lot more value because there's a lot more wealth in the U.S. dollar. This is the reason why crypto enthusiasts are so enthusiastic about crypto, because the theory is that only less than 1% of the world is investing in crypto right now, and that deficit versus how many people have money in fiat currencies, like the wealth of fiat currencies is a ton more than the entire wealth of cryptocurrencies as it stands right now. And this is the reason why crypto enthusiasts are enthusiastic about it, is because of the deficit and the potential that Bitcoin has in gaining in comparison to fiat currencies. Like Bitcoin will take money from fiat currencies, is what crypto enthusiasts say. And that is how it works, is just like that money gets exchanged into Bitcoin. Like prospectively, how much Bitcoin is going to make is people envisioning the amount of dollars of national currencies that will be exchanged into Bitcoin, because it's really just a matter of recategorizing value. There's so many billions of dollars of value in US dollars because people have them on hand. If somebody exchanges $10,000 of US dollars into Bitcoin, that's just a reclassifying of value. It's just like naming it a different thing. And that's ultimately what it is. But that name is generated for the US dollar as a result of the relevance of the United States of America. This is what makes the U.S. currency strong, and I would say that the U.S. is still the most powerful country in the world just as a result of they have the reserve currency. That's what I would look to as the determiner for that. America is the most important because they have the reserve currency, the reserve language, the reserve religion, and the reserve pop culture. Or in other words, Lady Gaga makes it to be huge in China, but there aren't any China pop stars that make it huge over here. That's because China is totalitarian. And it's really I think ultimately you wouldn't be able to say China is about to be more powerful than the US, because they aren't making a lot of strides in having the most important currency or having the most important pop culture. And especially right now, they aren't. they're really hurting themselves with, because people see videos of Chinese residents all locked up like they are in Shanghai right now. I mean, maybe in other cities, I know that they are in Shanghai at least, but like China is just locking down their residents, but it's because their culture is characterized by totalitarianism. The rest of the world sees that, and they're like, "Yeah, I think we'll pass." And so that's why things like that is why they don't have the reserve currency, and why their pop culture doesn't influence the rest of the world. It's because they're not really good at marketing themselves, and it really is a picture of that their culture isn't flourishing really if they're just locking people up. And if they're restricting freedom in this way, that's a picture of a culture that isn't flourishing, and really like the rest of the world isn't going to get on board with. The rest of the world isn't going to want to characterize themselves by totalitarianism. America is like the freest country in the world, and I mean, coincidentally, they're the most powerful, and people perceive their currency to be the best one. But like the thing is that the U.S. Constitution, like people politically have issues with it all the time. They've basically had issues with it since its inception, because even in the early days you had anti-federalists versus federalists, but it's always the argument that like we need to decentralize the power of the federal government to give it to states' rights. Like that's always been a big argument, but it's like America perceives the Constitution to be really strong, even though it's this paper that was written by fallible individuals more than 250 years ago. But like America is still held up by the Constitution is their backbone. And the Constitution ultimately allows the government, the U.S. government, the governing body of the United States, to say things about the currency, because that's the way that it stands now. And the U.S. government gets to change the rules of the game, because like the Constitution is written in such a way that it allows the governing body to change some of the rules when it wants to, and amendments can be made to the Constitution and shit like that. But in other words, the Constitution is not as immutable as Bitcoin, as the program that's written that creates the rules of the game for Bitcoin. The Constitution can be changed, and the governing body of the United States gets to change it. They get to change the parameters, change the rules of the game when they want to. And so Bitcoin is more immutable, but it's kind of like with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, you have these programs that they address currency specifically. Like, so in that regard, they aren't as, they don't do as many things as a nation does, because a nation does like the war effort and mobilizes resources through political actions and political initiatives. And so like a Bitcoin doesn't do that, obviously, but it's like Bitcoin takes on the issue of currency specifically, and then provides this environment for currency where the rules of the game won't change, and individuals get to control their wealth, and they don't have to worry about a civilization collapsing or anything like that, or there being a run on the banks, or whatever, or the United States choosing to inflate their currency, or the United States doing whatever with the interest rate through the Federal Reserve. With Bitcoin, you don't have to worry about the rules of the game being changed. And so it's like a constitution that's written for the modern day. And then that's better because now you're not relying on a piece of paper that's 250 years old and has been unable to adapt to all of the changes that have occurred in the world to this point. So you have with cryptocurrency computer programs, each one of them, you have all of these new constitutions that are written, and they're written for the modern day. They're already more relevant, which is what you're looking for as far as currency is concerned. But ultimately, like, investing in cryptocurrency has less of a risk than people think, I would say, because there's enough money to go around into the future. Probably, like, more and more money is being created. There's a statistic that I'll link in the description from ourworldanddata.org that shows the increase in global GDP over the last 2,000 years, and pretty much it's like the graph for the increase in GDP is steady and horizontal, and then it goes straight up into the air around the beginning of the 20th century, the same way a lot of other charts do for showing like increases in technology or just population. Like the same way there's a population boom at the beginning of the 20th century, there's a boom in wealth creation, but in other words, it's becoming like more and more. It's an exponential rate of increase of money creation, and basically money will be easier and easier to come by into the future. And like it would probably be to the point that there's enough money in the world that an economy of fiat currencies could be supported and an economy of cryptocurrencies could be supported. Like there's more and more money being infused into the system, and it would be really unlikely that none of that would make its way into the cryptocurrency world, especially when cryptocurrency is a better set of functions for dealing with money and gives people more privacy and makes them the bank. And then they're not relying on these giant corporate entities, but it's just like the way that things go is, if you're just monitoring the way that things typically go, and even these long-standing social constructs like narration, like we used to rely on news agencies for narration, and we see that that's slowly deteriorating. We used to rely on Hollywood for fame, and who we look to for who are supposed to perceive to be the most celebrated. We see that celebration is deteriorating and decentralizing. We see that information is decentralizing. It used to just like information is decentralizing massively, and that money wouldn't do that also. If you think that money will also decentralize the same way you've seen like the political landscape, our perception in political leaders is deteriorating quite a bit. If you think that money will also deteriorate in the same way, like you might say that money wouldn't do that the same way that narration does or whatever, but it's like money is probably just the next thing on the docket for our perception and belief in standardized controllers of it. Our perception of that will deteriorate in the same ways, likely. And if you think that it will, the answer is that cryptocurrencies are more decentralized. They're more decentralized because there's infinite facilities that can be created to house them, and they're peer-to-peer. But that they're like that they're not a scam. But it's like people look at China and they're like, China is cracking down on cryptocurrency, but what cryptocurrency offers everybody is the opportunity to control their own wealth. And it's like it's money that is given to the individual. It's like individuals now have the choice to vote to control all of the wealth. And it's like, I would say that you're contradicting yourself if you're saying that, if you're somebody who criticizes billionaires and the current system and financial inequality that rewards the people who are already the richest. You don't get to criticize that and also be a critic of cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is the answer to that problem if you really want to get involved in it. If you put money in a cryptocurrency, you're voting for a system where the money is given over to the individuals, and there's less and less financial inequality the more money is transferred to cryptocurrencies. And it has to do with the idea of privilege, where like secrecy and like having money is like having a secret, because the people who have money are retaining the power of some formula. And like privilege, what you're seeing with cryptocurrency is the decentralization of privilege. But as we have recognized in recent years, there's a lot of hubbub over the area of privilege, and it's kind of like it's kind of like a fear of a new system that decentralizes money is similar to a fear of privilege itself. But I'd say like there's a lot of fear surrounding privilege, the idea of it. There's a lot of misunderstanding of it. But like what people don't like about privilege is that um, they don't like when a CEO has a ton of money. Like they don't like how privilege manifests itself in like white people being CEOs or like white people being successful in individualized environments, like when it gets to the higher level statuses of the people at the highest levels of the company, like CEOs or CFOs, like there's overrepresentation of white people. And so people are like, that's white privilege. People are afraid of privilege. What they're afraid of is privacy, because that's what privilege is a word for. But more specifically, they don't like when privacy is hoarded into one into the power of one individual, which is what happens with a CEO. Like a CEO is the person who is an individual that's like representative of the entire company. And so like the private sector, if you have a CEO of a private sector company, they like retain the privilege of the privacy of that entire private company. And people don't like that amount of privilege being wrapped up in one person. They hate the financial inequality. It's kind of like what people want is a decentralization of privilege. And so you really shouldn't be somebody who criticizes billionaires and white privilege and financial inequality, and be somebody who criticizes cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency provides you the answer where it decentralizes privilege. And privilege is kind of like priviness or priviness or secrecy, having access to secrets or having rights that other people don't have. And so like privilege is a good word for linking secrets and money. Like it's a bridge that shows you how having money is like having secrets, because when you have more privilege, you have access to more secrets or more formulas that or more you have more rights than other people do, and you're able to use those rights, like hold them over people's heads to make money. Like if you know the secrets of formulas, like if you're Coke and Coke is the only one that knows the Coke secret formula, they are able to make all these billions of dollars off of Coke through the years because of their formula, because of their product. And this is like cryptocurrency versus fiat currency is deals in the area of secrecy, where deals in the area of secrecy, where it's like, does the US government able to retain the power of secrecy better than Bitcoin is able to retain a power of secrecy? Because if Bitcoin ever ends up making more money or has more wealth than there are wealth in US dollars, then it would be true that it was revealed that Bitcoin is a better secret than the US government. But like we see that the US government is very secretive. Like they're very good at keeping secrets. This is part of the reason why they're able to retain their power for so long. Or it's like it would be difficult to dissolve the power of that, because people associate the government with this high level of secrecy, and that's how the government wants it. And that's how they're able to be the reserve currency for the rest of the world, is because they're better secret keepers. But basically the rest of the world perceives America to have more secrets than they do. Like Botswana probably has the US dollar on hand in its banks to exchange in, because they perceive America to can be the most likely to continue to be relevant in the world. And they perceive this because they deem America to be something like the best at keeping secrets. But sort of the reason for that is like why you'd say that secrecy is what other countries are perceiving America to have, is because like America became the biggest and best economy in the world, or like they exploded as that title, especially after World War II. Like really during the course of the world wars, they became the most powerful. I mean, it might have been like after World War I that they really changed the game, but like after World War II, America is a major player, and or like the biggest player kind of undisputedly. And it's like they earned that title by proving to the rest of the world that they have the best trade secrets, like in war, because Germany had all of these secrets or all of these tactics, all of these ways of fighting the war, but America had better strategy, better tactics in order to defeat the Germans and win the war. And the rest of the world saw that, and they're like, well, yeah, America is like, and coincidentally, after World War II, America became very powerful. Like some of it has to do with just what the rest of the world perceives America to be able to do, and they credit America to be able to do all of these things. Or it's kind of like like intelligence that America has makes them more secretive to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world isn't able to match that level of intelligence, or they don't know how America is able to do it. They don't. No other country in the world is able to defeat Germany. And so America gets credit for being able to do that with their secrets and their tactics, their strategy. Germany never had, but it is secrets, because like when they did the Normandy invasion, America and the Allies had this idea of setting up all of these fake, like this fake line of tanks or something that they had stationed somewhere, that they knew the Germans would see that and then then the Germans would think that the US would be invading at this place, because America set up all of these fake tanks that they wanted Germany to see, but that was just a ruse. But it's like, that's why they won the war. It's because of secrets like this. America and the Allies won the war is because they had a higher level of secrecy, higher level of intelligence, wherein they have the technology with radar to see when planes are coming that the Axis didn't have. And so the rest of the world sees them win the war through their secrets and through the advantages that they have. So America has the reserve currency and shit like that because of their undefinability factor, where the rest of the world doesn't know how they're able to do it. But like, we invent the most things. The rest of the world doesn't know how we're able to sell everybody on that we have the best pop culture. Like, why is it that American celebrities get the most clout or whatever? It's difficult to say why, but the rest of the world believes them to be the people who are the most famous versus like celebrities that come out of India. And it's an intangible thing that causes everybody to perceive America to have the best secrets. And it's like secrecy is but privilege is a word that shows you how having money is like having a secret, because the people who have privilege have the most money, but you have privilege, you have access to more secrets. And like, what cryptocurrency does is it decentralizes privilege out of this state of things where privilege is hoarded into individuals or organizations, and then it makes the level of privacy to be, in terms of money, to be at the individual level, where the individual privately has control over their Bitcoin in their individual wallet, and they are the bank. And it's a comparison of levels of secrecy, but it's like Bitcoin has a better level of secrecy. Like, why is Bitcoin able to be created? And why would anybody instantly see this as comparable to the United States level of secrecy, especially when Bitcoin's program is sort of just like, I think you can look up the code for it, but like, people can, and then you can actually just create a new Bitcoin and then just call it something different. Like, that's basically what Dogecoin is. Dogecoin, it just took elements of Bitcoin's code, or like almost all of it, and then used that code and incorporated a couple of other elements from other places, and then named it Dogecoin. But like, the Dogecoin code is very, very similar to the Bitcoin code. They are essentially the same thing. And so like, it's just that Bitcoin is a better secret than the Constitution, because the Constitution is written in English, and everybody in America understands the Constitution at this point to some level. Like, it is pretty indecipherable, really, to the average person, because it's so old. But it's like, it's written in English, and we understand how its rules are applied, and that its rules can be changed. Like, we are well acquainted with the Constitution, and so it's actually It's actually probably easier to break down, like it's easier to break down the perception that the Constitution is strong and will continue to be strong for years and years, because people in America know how the Constitution is applied, but it's kind of like the government really hinges on the word government, and the power of government really hinges itself on people perceiving a lot of strength into the government, or really just the word of government, or people perceiving that they need to be governed or need a government. And like, sort of the question is that in reality, do people need to be governed? And because a lot of people would say, of course they do, because otherwise there'd be anarchy. But in reality, people don't need to be governed, because there are thousands of individuals that grow up and then discard the belief system that they were given when they were kids, like the belief system that's given to you by your immediate authorities or parents or surrounding adults. There are plenty of people that grow up and then overcome these boundaries that were given to them for their development stage. They overcome this and become their own adult and create their own rules for governing themselves. It's just that the world operates now thinking that we do need to be governed, or like that isn't possible, or that happening for everybody is a bad thing. And I would say that that's very superstitious. It's superstitious in the way that we continue to allow this environment that allows people to hoard privilege, like lots of privilege being hoarded in one individual, rather than seeing it more clearly that privilege or privacy, the place for privacy is with the individual and should be given to everybody, like the same way that privilege was greatly decentralized in the area of narration. When people get to tweet their own thing, they have their own private account, and through their private account they control, like, they control their own statements and get to privately issue them to the rest of the internet the way that they want to, and they get power over their own privacy, basically, more so now than anybody ever used to. Through Facebook and Twitter, we all have the power over our own privacy, and it isn't given to the collectivized narrations of people around you. Now every individual gets to control their own perception of themselves. Through Facebook, they get to issue their own whatever. And it's like that on its own is a decentralization of privilege. But like there's the privilege of the, but it's like there's a certain privacy that's associated with the U.S. government, but the Constitution is written in English, and if people perceive, it's just that like government is kind of like a perception, like celebrity or Hollywood or politics or politicians, and like the politician of today has a lot less potency than they did 20 years ago. Just look at that trajectory, and does that trajectory make you feel comfortable about what we're perceiving about government itself, when this is just kind of like the first layer of it, the superficial appearance layer that consists of all of the politicians and their faces that we're like, okay, that's government. This layer we see is deteriorating, because the average politician today, we don't care about their ability to change things. We don't believe in it. We don't believe in their potency to change things. Like, I would say that it's to the point that politician as a word, I can declare, and I do. I just declare people to be politicians when they aren't, like when I'm referring to somebody who's just kind of a faker or full of hot air, or somebody who's just a talker, or somebody who just markets and doesn't do anything other than that besides network or market. That's kind of like a politician, somebody who's just a talker. And that's really more so what you're able to refer to those as than you would have been able to 20 years ago, because politics is deteriorating. And how long before government as a word is something that we start to deteriorate our belief in that thing should be really standardized? What goes along with us deteriorating that is saying that we govern ourselves. But like, I would say that in reality, we don't. People people do govern themselves, and I think that quality of life is improved when you become somebody who decides your own belief system and governs yourself. I think it's better to do that than rely on. But like if you don't, then we live in an environment where we're just like we need mom and dad to decide for us as a country, which it's like 20 years ago we were much more reliant on mom and dad to decide everything for us when we believed a lot of strength into the politicians and CNN to tell us what to do. All of that, like authority, parenting itself or whatever for the nation is kind of like our belief in those rules are deteriorating. But like it's a matter of privilege and secrecy. I guess I made it 50 minutes so I could just talk about whatever, but like China, do you like if China is cracking down on cryptocurrency, which there's a lot of news reports that there are, but like cryptocurrency, because it has gained enough volume in terms of money in recent years, it is now a competitor with all currencies, and so it has become this political issue where even the people who were trying to avoid it ever being a part of their lives now have to answer to it. And so those people are making a big stink about that this even exists. So like they've been drawn into the picture. So there's more backlash as this becomes a political issue in the same way that before Trump ran for office, everyone was mostly fine with him. But he ran for office and he throws himself the political game, and then like half of the people hate him. So like at the point that cryptocurrency is actually in the conversation, it becomes this political issue. And so like in the most recent wave of news, like last year of cryptocurrency, it's basically all been negative, the same way that Trump or like the new way of doing things or like conspiracy theories themselves get tons of negative press from the news agencies that are already standardized and know that conspiracy theories are a major threat to their standardized narration. It's the same way with the cryptocurrency. Now it's like kind of the onus of politics overall is shifting to the financial sector, where it's like we used to believe in CNN and now our belief in that is deteriorating, but that same belief for CNN is kind of shifted to like the CNBC, which is the financial NBC one, the financial news NBC, CNBC. Like the focus is more on that because the political, like the argument or the fight is more just over this like cryptocurrency versus fiat currency or something like that, more defines the political landscape. And so it's become this political issue, and there is a ton of negative press about cryptocurrencies from the establishment that didn't used to exist like a couple of years ago. And probably the reason why cryptocurrency was able to make a jump that it did like in 2021 is because there used to be mostly positive articles about it, and now most of the articles are negative. But it's a lot more difficult to find the articles that are just like news of progress that Bitcoin is making, like an article that says Costa Rica is now accepting Bitcoin or Ethereum, which there's like articles like that all the time. But there's just all these centralized establishment news agencies that really don't want cryptocurrency to succeed because their power is dependent on like the U.S. government. They are going to argue pretty heavily. I mean, they're going to run articles that cryptocurrency sucks or whatever, and it's like it's going to continue to deflate or whatever. And so they're also going to run articles that say that the government is able to regulate the currencies and China is regulating them, and everybody's going to follow suit. But like, like China probably is regulating them to some degree or something, but like it's pretty ambiguous whatever they're able to do. It's just that like the way that China is dealing with this emerging technology, if they are regulating it and they're making sure nobody in their country buys it because they are totalitarian and want to crack down on their individuals' rights and freedoms and privacy and privileges. They want privilege to continue to be centralized and retained by major powers. Does China, like, it doesn't, I don't think that it would be a good thing to follow China's lead in this. The way that they're reacting to this cryptocurrency doesn't seem very positive to me. They're just characterizing it by totalitarianism. I think that the rest of the world doesn't really want that. And ultimately, doesn't doesn't vote for or prefer or reward China for influencing the culture in this way, by reacting to cryptocurrency negatively. I don't think it's better to do what China is doing in reaction to cryptocurrency. I think it's better to invest in it. I mean, if you want privilege to be decentralized, but it's like secrecy and privacy. It's like what I was mentioning in the last episode about Santa Claus and their. It's interesting. As I think about it, about Santa Claus, and that, like, there's all these kids that believe in Santa Claus. Like, the only people who believe in Santa Claus are kids that think that he's real, but like those kids were just walking around not knowing anything about Santa before these adults came around and created the myth for them. It's really like the adults that create the myth. It's almost to the point that adults believe in Santa more than kids do, because like kids weren't asking for it. It's just adults that created it and instilled that belief system in kids that make it anything at all. Like, kids didn't know about it, but like this is like privacy and secrecy. I'm just talking about how privacy is like access to information. The Santa Claus thing is weird because it divides us into two groups immediately, but it's like this thing doesn't need to happen, because everybody ultimately knows the truth that Santa Claus isn't real, but that truth is actually privilege at the point that we create this division between two groups of people, where one of the groups of people knows that he's not, and then one of them does know. One of them knows that he's not real, and then one of them thinks that he's real. Like this creates a divide between these two groups of people, and like the group of people that thinks that he's real doesn't even know that this divide exists. And this is something like secrecy itself, or like that's what secrecy does, is like there's levels of it where if you really have access to the formula, it's like having access to, like, having the title is part of the secret, or like is part of having access to the information. Like being the CEO is the highest level of privilege you're going to attain at a company, or in other words, you have the most secrets, and it's kind of like you make it to that level because, like, if the CFO is the second in power, you actually have more secrets than the CFO even, but it's like the only way that you have the access to the most privilege at the company, or like have the highest status, is if you become the CEO, and everybody else doesn't know what it's like to be a CEO. It's like only at the point that you are the CEO. I guess it'd be like the same as the president of the United States. It's only at the point that you become the president that you actually know the secrets of like what it is like to be a president. Otherwise, you're just on the outside looking in, and that secret is guarded. But like there's levels of it where it's like if you actually reach the highest level, like the president, then you've reached the highest level of privilege, or the highest level of secrecy, and you get more fame and more accolades and more authority all the way up. But it's like before you're the CEO, there will always be a lot of secrecy in that, and that is the highest level of secrecy. And this is what happens with the Santa Claus myth, is like you kind of have to graduate to the higher level of knowing, of understanding, like, oh, he isn't real. And it's weird when that happens, when it is unnecessary. Like, no adult had to say this thing or create this, but adults do it for their own advantages, and that's why it exists at all, is because of adults that want kids to believe it so that they can control their kids, so that their kids aren't unruly and don't make them look bad in public gatherings. But it's like it's not that bad of a thing to do that, because social pressures are really tough on moms and dads, where they're like, you're gonna start thinking you're a bad mom or dad if your kid is just running around anywhere. And it helps to throw in Santa Claus to say, like, Santa's gonna watch you be bad. so that you can have a cosmic babysitter. Um, and then your kids will be less unruly, and then you get to abide by social whatever, and now you won't get socially shamed by all of your friends because your kid is just running around. So it's like Santa kind of helps in that way. And that's why parents do it, is like control their kids to not be unruly. But like that's the thing, is that Santa is a god that people believe in, and so it's kind of weird that everyone's who knows that he isn't real is like, yeah, he's completely not real, when we actually treat him as the god of Christmas in the same way that we worship like God that we don't see. People worship Santa and do all of this shit in his name, where Santa has parents and adults all over the country buying gifts and then crediting it to Santa. Like, Santa has this pretty major operation going on for being a guy that doesn't exist, where he gets all of this credit for gifts and shit. Like, he actually gets a lot of credit he almost gets real credit for being in everybody's home in one night, because he is the name that's given credit at the end of the day but like, Santa has all of these adults doing his bidding for being a guy that isn't real, but it's like, it's really adults that are doing all of his bidding or creating him to exist at all. Is what's kind of interesting about it. But I'm saying that to say, like, the level of privilege, like, you have to graduate to that level of secrecy with the Santa Claus thing, where like, oh, now you become the group of people. But like, it's kind of weird how secrecy works that way, where you don't even know about the level of secrecy until you arrive in a lot of cases. But it's like, it's kind of like the idea of listening itself, where like secrecy is a little bit like listening, or yeah, so it's like you graduate. It's really not like, it's not private. Your privacy is exploited as a kid that doesn't know the truth about Santa Claus by all of the people who do know the truth about it. Your privacy is kind of exploited because everybody's like knows that you're an idiot, but they're also making you to be one by introducing this lie to your life that you didn't know. Like, I'm not saying like people shouldn't do that, or is like it's a horrible thing. I'm just saying it's kind of funny that yeah, Santa Claus is completely not real, but like we use him for all of these purposes. And so only at the point that you really only know the real secret, and yeah, it's kind of like a level of privacy that's introduced with the myth. But like, there's something else I was going to say about it. Now I forget. It's like, yeah, there's the secrecy. There's the secrecy, and then there's the whatever else. Um, Man, what was I going to say? Oh well. Thanks for taking the time to go and listen to me today. I appreciate that. I'll put out more episodes in the future. This is the Currency Podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube and subscribe to my podcast on Apple or Spotify. Goodbye.